The only thing you paid in college was your fucking cell phone bill, and you feel like you did that all on your own? Sit the fuck down, dude.
Trump signed an executive order saying that you can no longer look at race during college admissions, if I understand the order right. And I think I agree with Trump in there. This should just be merit-based. And part of it is this. You've mentioned like redlining and historical economical deficiencies. The people applying to college next were born in 2001. Right, 2001. That's like recent history to me. 2001. I was working at Cisco. I think I was like that. That to me is not the olden days when these kids were born. This reality of segregation and slavery. They are so far removed from that time when the planet was still black and white. It doesn't. Merit-based admissions just seem fair to me.
Sure. So the thing that is very like intangible about that kind of stuff is that one thing that we don't I'm gonna dip into the topic of privilege here, which is very uncomfortable for a lot of people, I understand. But one thing that we don't count on is all of the advantages that we have being born into certain types of families. So if you are somebody that is born into a family with a mom and a dad, where the mom can stay home and work, and both parents are college educated, if you just run like a Bayesian analysis on this type of person, the chances that they will be successful and college educated like grows dramatically versus like single parent households where only some colleges completed, where no college is completed, where no high school is completed, based on the income of the parents. You have all of these things that can predict future success of a person without even fucking knowing anything about them, right? Show me two people, show me one of them born to a middle-class family with a stay-at-home mom and whose earnings are in the six-figure range versus another one with a single crack mom who has like earnings in the welfare range, who is like living off of EBT, right? I can give you outcomes. I can be very predictive of the types of people that will be created in these environments. And the problem is,
them into college, you're setting them up for failure in a way. There's a reason that if you're trying to get into Yale, for example, and they're like, all right, this student's black, they have a test score that if they were white or Asian, we would never even consider them, but they're black and we need to let them in. You're letting someone in who's not prepared for that elite university, and they failed disproportionately because of that. Because
and there are
not
arguments
prepared for that.
Sure,
yeah, and there are arguments
on top
to be
of that,
made for those. Yeah,
you're making this argument is it's socioeconomic, and I oh my god, this sounds so racist to say it, but they've done when they adopt a person and put them in these families that would set them up for success, they don't do as well as their natural born children, right? So some of this is just merit based. It's not just a socioeconomic disadvantage.
Oh man, we got a race realist argument. You're referring to the Minnesota Twin studies there?
I read it in the bell curve. I don't know what. I forget where he came from.
The bell curve. Charles Murray. Oh, I'm very familiar with a lot of these things.
Yeah, it just seems like merit based is fair, right?
Yeah. I guess at the end of the day, what I would say is that the thing that feels shitty is that if you go back to the 50s and 60s, people weren't targeting socioeconomically disadvantaged groups of people. People were targeting black people. And even to today, now that we have all these black people in these kind of most fucked ways, now when we have things that aren't racist, like the war on drugs, which isn't racist, but it kind of is.
You're literally talking about these kids' grandparents, right? I've got a girl.
It's not that long ago.
Yeah, I've got a girl who's in college now, right? Not applying to college next year, but going in to be a sophomore. And I was born in '73, and you're talking about the 50s, right? That's ages ago. At some point, we get to make this stuff merit-based.
Sure, but I mean, if I take any Kennedy that's born in the United States, do you think that these people all of them are super overachievers and they're working really hard all the time? Or do you think a lot of these guys have been born into families that have been rich for generations?
Weren't you fussing about individual examples just 10 minutes ago?
Well, I could point to economic data that shows that people. So we divide wealth into quintiles, right? People that are born into the top quintile of wealth have a 70% chance of remaining there throughout their entire life. People born into the bottom
who are born
quintile,
to NBA stars have a really good chance of being good at basketball, right? Both of Michael Jordan's kids played Division I ball.
And this is also assuming those quintiles don't move around. You're not statically stuck in that third quintile. A lot of it has to do with age and career progression. It's people tend to go up those. Maybe you're not going to make it to that top one or even the second one, but you are more likely to ratchet that up. So if you broke those down by age, like you're going to see a lot more young people in those lower income areas.
Well, not if you're born into an upper income area. That's
No,
the thing.
but, like,
It's called
that's
in economics. It's called stickiness at the ends, right? It's a super well observed phenomenon in the U.S. that if you're born really well off, you tend to be really well off. If you're born really fucked off, you tend to be kind of fucked. People can move, and it does happen, and there is some economic mobility in the U.S. It's not quite as good as other Western nations, but the thing is that just like if your grandparents were super fucked, there's a decent chance that your parents were pretty fucked, which means there's an okay chance that you're going to be kind of fucked. Like you can work your way out of it, but the amount of work that you have to do compared to another person born into like a much better circumstance, it just feels kind of shitty for those people to talk down on the other people. Like, not to sound like really rude or mean or anything, but like if you were born into a family that was like doing well, is like a middle class family, and you got like your bachelor's degree and now you have like out of college a 60, 70,000 year job, you didn't really do much. Like you just kind of showed up every day to your life and like you did it. But I mean, you kind of did what was expected of you. But then to turn around and look at somebody that was born to a single parent household, whose mom like was never home, who was working 3 jobs, who barely graduated high school, and then to look at that person and go, well, why didn't you graduate college like I did? It's like, motherfucker, you didn't do anything exceptional.
I love this notion that underachieving parents have so much less time, right? Like, oh, your father was an attorney. He probably just fucked off all the time and stayed home and played with you as a child, taught you how to play baseball. You know, but your mom, she worked a cash register, so she most likely was so busy she could have never helped you with your homework.
Well, what I mean is like you have to acknowledge that like having a stay-at-home mom is a massive advantage. With the fact that you can go home and have a parent there that can help you with homework, that's invested in your success, that cares about you, that is monumentally helpful to a lot of children versus being in a single parent household where the parent just doesn't really have time to spend with you.
Not having a father in the home is one of the largest predictors for
of being a criminal,
violence, acting out, being a criminal, not having a positive male role model in the family.
But does that mean that you take a kid who followed the straight and narrow and not give him the opportunity that the other fucked one did?
No, I was just saying that's true. It is badly impactful. But how does that tie to, well, now your test scores are lower, so sorry, Mr. Asian guy, you get the boot because we got to let this guy in who is probably not going to succeed because we got to hit our quotas. You know, like when this guy could go to a university that is more apt to fit his needs and actually succeed.
Sure. And I think to be fair, like, I don't know if I feel comfortable, like, literally putting in a black person over a white person. Like, when I think of, like, affirmative action programs, like, more beneficial ones, I think, are, like, there are groups of people that will come together and raise money for a cause. So maybe you make, like, a black scholarship program or something. So, like, if a black person gets that scholarship, it's fine. But if you would say something like, well, no affirmative action, like, those people wouldn't raise that money. So it's not like a white person is necessarily losing out just because, you know, there were these types of programs that existed in the first place.
Well, by definition, someone's losing out. There are a limited number of spots.
Well, because they wouldn't. Well, is that true in like maybe like in Ivy League schools?
He was talking about raising money, not spots.
Yeah,
like a scholarship.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if a black organization wants to start a black scholarship fund, fine, go for it.
That feels shitty to me. Like the litmus test I always apply to these things is if you flip it and say, hey, we're going to raise money for white people and only white people can benefit from this. That feels shitty too. Like it just doesn't feel, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it because I think it even ties into like free speech and liberty and such. Like you should be able to.
If it's a private organization that's like about black needs or whatever, they have the right to do that. That's their money. They can give it to someone else.
Yeah, I agree that it's the right to do it. I also agree that it kind of feels shitty to do anything based on race. I don't like that. But
I agree with you.
Yeah. But it just feels shitty to have like generations and generations of like wealth built up by white people, like literally through racial policies against black people. And then when we make that illegal, now we're like, whoa, hold on. Like, we don't want to do anything race-based now. It's like, okay, well, fuck, we kind of got fucked a long time ago in a lot of ways.
A long time ago, there was some fucking. There's no doubt about
generations,
that. But we're talking about like the 50s. Yeah.
2 generations.
2 generations is the difference between me and my grandfather. My grandfather came off a boat. He was poor. My grandmother also came off the boat. They beat their children. My grandfather ran away. My grandmother stayed around, worked a cash register at J.C. Penney. When my grandfather ran away, my father said, great, this is an improvement on our situation. And my father made a lot out of himself. He did fantastic. I don't have that same story to tell because I was raised in a good... Well, like,
a lot of behaviors are a lot of your behaviors are so predicted. Like even I think your political affiliation isn't that like heritable to like 80%, like 0.8 heritability, like a political affiliation.
Not in my family, but it may be. I wouldn't be sure.
So like there's just so much that passes from your parents that I think people kind of take for granted. That like I don't know. It's
yeah. So anything but merit based feels really shitty.
I agree. yeah, everyone should earn their own way. And how can you feel like you earned something if it's given to you anyway? You know what I mean?
Like, oh shit, you fucking gonna trigger the fuck out of me, okay? I don't think that anybody, if you want to go into like, this is like hours, like free will versus determinism and shit, like people will, this is like the really common argument that I'll hear is that like, you're the real racist, you think black people need help because they can't succeed on their own, right? Well, my answer to some extent is, yeah, I don't think black people can succeed on their own, but I don't think white people can succeed on their own either. I don't think anybody succeeds on their own. For the most part, you are a product of your environment, right? If you're born into a really well-off situation, like you're probably going to do okay. If you're born into a really...
Shouldn't all be class-based instead of race-based?
There are good arguments for that. To some extent, I can agree with that. And I'm usually more comfortable saying, and actually, there are really good arguments for making it class-based because sometimes some affirmative action programs end up going to groups of people that they probably shouldn't. For instance, there are some studies that show that like affluent white women take advantage of a lot of scholarship programs that probably shouldn't be going to wealthy white women.
I've heard that.
Yeah, there's actually a huge schism in the feminism movement right now between people of color women versus white women, but that's a whole other thing. But like everybody has like this huge set of advantages and shit, and there's so much laid out before you before you're even fucking born that determines like how successful you can or cannot be. So like when people don't take account of those advantages and then they levy the same expectations on other people, I don't know, that makes me feel really shitty. Like people have so many.
But if you say, I don't think anybody can succeed on their own, then it's kind of like, what option do you have other than to just base it on class? But to say, it does seem kind of racist to say, yeah, I don't believe black people can succeed on their own. They need an extra boost from us.
But again, I would say the same thing about white people, because white people that are born into fucked families have bad outcomes as well. It's just that there are more black people per capita, or there are more black people as a percentage of black people born into bad socioeconomics than white people, is what I would say. And then to respond, or go ahead.
Oh, no, go for it.
I was going to say, to respond to like, well, what do we do? This is why I think asking this question is so important. Like, why are people fucked, right? Because the goal is to make environments as good as possible. So get rid of like lead contaminated housing. This needs to fucking stop. The war on drugs probably
is that still a thing? Lead contaminated
still
housing?
A thing.
I feel like that's getting sorted out a long time ago.
What city was it that just showed that like 80 some kids tested for lead poisoning levels? This was like just in the news like fucking 2 days ago, I think. But yeah, it's still a problem. Or like Flint, Michigan. Like these are things that are still like very much like active problems. And a lot of the places that seem to have these problems are rundown buildings that, you know, black people happen to live in, you know, and there's a lot of like really interesting research following like crime history with like elevations of lead and shit that match up across like 25 different countries. It's like, oof. Yeah.
I've heard that too. I've heard that I don't know how true this is. It might just be grasping at straws. But so when Giuliani was mayor of New York, they had a dramatic decrease in crime. But that actually happened nationwide. And they were saying that it had to do with them not using lead in gasoline anymore. And that the people who would commit crimes were coming of age at the time that lead was removed from gasoline, so they weren't psycho crazies. Yeah, lead in crime and psycho craziness is a correlation. But I thought lead was removed in paint before I was a kid, like a long, long time ago.
Yeah, I thought that was very long
Who
ago.
has walls that were painted from the 1940s?
Yeah, lead is removed from paint, but the problem is that it still exists in a lot of like, there are two big places that exist. One is in the paint that's currently on walls because it doesn't get painted over because poor places don't have money to renovate. And then two, it can be in soil outside. Like lead ends up contaminating soils, and those measurements can be taken like very accurately and measured across cities. But like, yeah, you've got things like that. You've got like incarceration related shit. You've got like the war on drugs. You've got other.
Is there like an equivalent higher rate of cancer in those communities, or any other like maladaptive health things that we could tie to lead poisoning or lead?
I don't know if
impact?
lead predicts different types of cancer rates as much. I just haven't researched that at all. But I know that lead can predict. Lead can be highly predictive of criminal activity in terms of lead exposure at birth to, and then as a child up to your later life. And there are also biological mechanisms that explain how lead interacts with your body to create a more violent person as well. So like there's the mechanism to explain it, and then there's the empirical data that shows it happening.
So just as an FYI, lead was removed from paint in 1978. So it's places that were painted 40 years ago.
Sure, that's not hard to believe at all, I don't think.
Yeah, I bet it's not that common though.
Well, in some places, I mean, you can look up like lead soil levels. Well,
No,
depending
they
on
would
how
have had to
shitty
paint in the
this
last 40
guy,
years.
the guy that lives in St. Louis, right? That's you, Taylor. Like, if you go to some places, I'm sure you could find some piece of shit fucking buildings that have not had like a new. And
half
another,
of the city looks like a paintball course.
sure. Another problem too isn't necessarily that like when they redo a lot of these places, they just paint over it too. So as paint starts to chip off and stuff over time, like that old lead shit is like, you know, like for asbestos, like a lot of the times for asbestos in a house, you don't actually get rid of it, you just seal it. But as time wears on, if that sealant starts to wear off and it starts to become exposed, like this is like a super well studied phenomenon that we should probably.
I've never even heard about the lead being used as a reason for this.
Sure, it's super fast. I highly recommend it. When I first saw it, I'm so skeptical of big claims like that, and it sounded incredibly fantastical to me. But basically, especially because the guy that did the research wasn't like a medical guy at all; he was an economist. But basically, if you look up like violent crime in the United States, I don't think it was a Freakonomics guy. I could be wrong.
He definitely talked about it. I don't know if he was first.
Oh, I'm sure they have. They've talked about it in a lot of podcasts. It's super fascinating. What this guy found was that lead contamination levels in soil, if you would draw a graph, it would look like this, like a kind of like a little arc or whatever. And then if you did a graph on violent crime, like 18 years later, it like perfectly matched in some areas. So what he started to do is he started to take all of these cities and he was doing these regression analyses and finding that all of them fit the mold. And then he went and he looked at other countries and he could find the same patterns in other countries as well, that you could find these lead levels, measure them in the soil, and that 18 years later, they would be these massive predictors in change in crime. And it's super fascinating research. And like when I read stuff like that, it makes me wonder like, holy shit, something as stupid as like lead paint can lead to so much fucking horrible shit. Like what else, what other kinds of like seemingly harmless things can have like such disparate impacts on society?
I usually find myself erring on the side of, are we past this yet? Like lead was removed from paint in 1978. So how many painted walls from 40 years ago are we dealing with? And
I mean, if you look at the data on like where the soil levels are measured, there's still a lot of places that have this shit. And you know, like
dirt.
Well, just kicking up the dirt, playing outside, breathing in the air around it on good days. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to go full retard.
You remember how you played as a kid?
we didn't always sit inside like all day and not go outside ever. Like, I'm pretty sure I fucking ate dirt as a kid, but I don't think you even have to.
But we're talking about today, though. We're talking about today. They got to be out there making
Not
a
even
mud
today.
pie.
Everyone in this
morning,
podcast
these kids
is
are
10
going
years
outside
older
making
than the
today
kids we're
mud
talking about.
Yeah, no, today it's not a problem as much as it was anymore, right? This predicted major spikes of crime in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
I know,
That's where the
but
huge
we're talking
crime
about
wave was,
next
right?
year's college admissions. Like that's the core topic. That
Yeah,
we're
but if
still
you
on.
had parents in the 80s that were committing violent crimes because of lead paint and shit, what kind of children are these people having, like either out of wedlock and broken families or dads that are locked up in jail? Like this is having very real impacts on children today.
I would love to hear a kid say that. They're like, hey, man, I noticed your life's real fucked up. You know, you don't have a car. You got 3 kids by 3 different women. You're living on government assistance. What happened? Ah, man, my dad, he ate paint chips.
Yeah, but like, so like that sounds ridiculous to you.
Yeah. Oh, your dad ate paint chips?
That sounds ridiculous to you. But then when I hear a white dude who's 27 and just got his fucking bachelor's degree talks about how proud he is that he finally finished college, and this motherfucker lived off of mommy daddy welfare his entire way
You're
through college,
literally talking about Taylor right now.
Yeah, and he's like so proud.
Wait.
He's like, I got my shit, blah blah blah, and it's like,
You're 20,
motherfucker,
I'm
the
just saying.
only thing you paid in college was your fucking cell phone bill, and you feel like you did that all on your own? Sit the fuck down, dude. You are so lucky that mommy and daddy put you through school. Like, have a little bit, just a fraction of empathy for people that might not have necessarily had it like as good as you. Like, it bothers me just as much on the other end. And I think that like parents have a massive impact on how kids turn out. I mean, I'm sure you see it, Woody, when you go out to restaurants. You ever see a kid start to scream and parents just start feeding him fucking candy to shut the kid up, right? Or kids that are obese when they're fucking 14 years old, or not even like 10, 11 years old.
Oh, we hate the
kids
fatties.
are obese,
They're on the list.
right?
Yeah,
and
they're
like,
on the list.
you can hate the fatty, but one, this kid is fucked for life. You know he's going to be obese growing
It'll
up.
be a
And
short
two,
life if I have my way.
Sure. And 2, when he grows up and he has kids, those kids are probably going to be fucked too, because if this guy's already obese at 9 years old, this guy weighs, I've seen kids at fucking 9 or 10 years old that weigh more than I do. This guy's fucked forever, you know? I think we discount sometimes how much our like environment has an impact on the choice we make, because we
You're
want to
also
feel
really
like,
forgiving too, right? Like I don't beat my children, and I took some pretty good beatings as a kid. Like at some point you are responsible for your own actions.
I mean, I don't care to look at like responsibility is boring to me, in that like it seems like a thing where it's just like oh, like who, blah, blah, blah. I'm just more interested in like, how are you going to act in these certain conditions, right? So like, are you responsible for your actions? Ultimately, you're responsible for every action you do. But that question doesn't get us anywhere. It's more like, why do you do the things that you do? Why are you shooting up heroin in a fucking alleyway? Like, did you grow up from an early age aspiring to be a fucking homeless dude sucking dick for drug money? Was that your goal as a child? Or what the fuck went wrong, right? Yeah, were you eating? Yeah, like what went wrong in your life that caused this to happen? And what can we do to keep that from happening to future people so that the people aren't making these horrible decisions? Is like what I'm generally concerned.
I don't think is send that guy to college over someone who didn't mess up, who did take the straight and narrow, who was responsible with their life. Because the thing about college is it's kind of a zero-sum game, right? Like, some people get it, some people don't. It's not as if we can just give it to everybody. There's a cutoff, and some people get in and some don't. So it should be merit-based. That seems fair.
Yeah. We should wrap it up soon.
Oh, sure.
Kyle and I have got to be up early. Also, Woody finished my degree at 22, so fuck you.
Oh no, I think I misunderstood what he was saying when I think he was saying this is the stage in life where they're proud of themselves for having these accomplishments. So I wasn't saying that you took till 27 to finish school. I was saying
I'm not trying to like.
I was saying that like you know when he
whatever,
talks about that stage in life, I'm like, yeah.
I feel you. Then I misunderstood. You're misunderstood.
Well, be sure to.
I'm not necessarily trying to like shit on people that are like doing like the straight and narrow. Like that's great, but it's like I remember that like when I went into college, I almost went into college as a sophomore. I took an insane amount of math. I took so many AP classes, dual enrollment classes in high school that I almost went into college as a sophomore. I consider myself to be a pretty bright person. I went in for a music degree and I flunked out of college in like my junior year, and it's because I was working 60 hours a week because I didn't have any help at all. Once I was past 16, my parents were gone. They moved to another state, and I had no help in my life. And I remember sitting in like a practice room one day with my little saxophone quartet, listening to another girl talk about how like, oh shit, dude, like, do any of you guys work? Like, I'm so fucked on homework. And I remember saying like, oh yeah, dude, like, do you work too? Like, yeah, it's like pretty rough. And she's like, yeah, like they just upped my hours. I was only doing 12 hours a week, and now I'm doing 15, and I don't have any time. And meanwhile, I'm like tired out of my fucking blown out of my mind because I'm working like overnight shifts, like 10 hours a day, like 6 days a week, like to pay for everything. And it's like, oh fuck, like you're so lucky that you could go to school. Like if I would have had parents to pay my way through school, I would have graduated with a degree 100%. It's a fucking music degree. I know I can get the degree. But like due to the fact that I had to work on my way through it, like I don't know, it feels like I got really fucked, you know? And then to listen to people that never had to work try to levy claims is like, well, maybe that person is just lazy, or maybe they didn't accomplish much. Like nobody today ever tells me that I'm stupid or I'm an idiot, but I flunked out of music school and I was working as a fucking carpet cleaner making $20,000 a year. My life I was an abject failure in life in every single measurable way. And I got really lucky that I happened to grow up at the right time to get into streaming. And, you know, I knew a lot of stuff because I was lucky enough to grow up with video games and shit that I could turn it into a career. But I'm like one or two decisions away from being like a loser that is losing his house, has horrible credit, and is just fucked in every measurable aspect in life.
I think everybody is. Everyone's only a heroin addiction away.
Yeah, so I'm on the other side of that. Like I work during the day and I put myself through school at night. Now I recognize it's a little cheaper back in the 90s and 2000s, but I got 2 bachelor's degrees and 1 master's degree, and the whole time, you know, worked all day, went to school at night. It was a tremendous amount of work. You know, the thing I keep remembering is I couldn't watch a movie. I couldn't watch a single 2-hour show and not think like, man, this is a serious waste of time. I have a project due, a paper due. I have all these things that are occupying my time. And I feel like I earned my stuff. You know, I did that. It took 12 years of that lifestyle.
Sure. And that's awesome.
So, yeah and it's merit-based. You know,
yeah. I mean, like,
you know, I guess, like you wouldn't take off my straight and narrow. Well, actually, I worked so hard because maybe I didn't go straight and narrow in high school. I could have set myself up for success as a high schooler. But, you know, I did that whole thing. And then to say like, no, you know, you had parents. Your dad went to college, so, and didn't leave your mom. So really, you didn't accomplish anything. It's like, man, really? Huh.
I guess like what it feels to me is that like if you're in a really well-off place, if you're born in a really well-off place, there are so many opportunities in front of you that for you to end up a fuck up at the end of that, you must have fucked up so much to actually ruin your life. Like I know people that took 7 years to get their bachelor's degree that lived at home until they were fucking like 26, 27 years old because their parents loved them and would take care of them and all that shit. But when you're on the other end of things and you're kind of like in a fuck spot about, say, like where I am, it feels like you're sliding down a fucking building and there's like one ledge like behind you or below you. And if you don't catch that one fucking ledge, that like one opportunity, you're fucked in life completely. And that when people act like everybody has the same opportunities because like I made it, I did well, I could just as easily come out and say like, well, look, guys, I was a broke carpet cleaner and, I made it, you should all be able to make it too. The reality is like, I could have been one or two mistakes away from missing all of this and just being a carpet cleaner for the rest of my life and blowing my brains out, Like,
I have such a different philosophy and experience than
man.
you, right? So in high school, I fucked up, right? I graduated with a 1.98, lowest GPA of anyone I ever knew. Got into college because I could swim, which was helpful. And I got good grades in there. And then because I'm a jackass, got thrown out of the dorms. Grades tanked again, right? Fucked up. Went to night school. And, then I started going to night school, producing. Didn't like my first career, accounting. Picked up a second degree, MIS. Produce. Then, I finished MIS. Felt like I didn't know as much as the comp sci guys. Got a master's degree. Just keep going. You can fuck up, choose the wrong major, choose the wrong career, get bad grades again. Life is long. If you keep plugging away at this thing, you'll get what you want. There is no, like, I'm on the edge of a mountain. If I fall off, then that's my last chance. Last chance? Why? Just do more.
No, that's so not true, though. If you're stuck in
I did it twice, 3 times. Like, how's it not true?
You can be stuck in spots in your life. If you're like in your early 20s and you didn't go to school and maybe you fucked up and had a kid or something, or you're working a job, like you don't always have the opportunity to attend a night school. Maybe you don't have one near you, or maybe you don't even have the money to really do it. Like where you don't have the extra time to commit to something, where you could be stuck on like a really
night school near you? My commute was 2 hours to night school.
Not everybody can make a 2-hour commute. Like, not everybody has the access
Really?
to transportation. Yeah, really. Not everybody has a car where they could drive to.
It's not
a lot of people
easy, but like, it's hard work. It's fucking really hard. It dominates your entire life. That was my 20s. Like, gone. Like,
yeah, I mean, like,
I didn't have
some people can do it, and it's awesome that they can, but the expectations that we place on people that are fucked are so much higher than other people that when they don't make it, it just feels bad to kind of shit on them for it, I guess. Maybe I'm too much of a bleeding heart. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I just feel like life is long. Opportunities come. It never stops. There is no like, oh, well, slipped. I'm carpet cleaning until death now.
If you're like 32 and you're like a blue collar worker that never went to college, I don't
glad
feel like you have many opportunities.
Because I was 32 still in school, and I had lots of classmates. At night school, if you go to class at night, there's lots of adults in there. People who are over 30 who decided, like, you know what? I've noticed that the path to better success is college. So here I am. And it's a pretty neat dynamic if you ever go to night school. The way that the professors interact with the students is a little different. It's like an adult doing adult thing.
Sure. I feel like if I were to look up outcomes, though, for people in their 30s working blue-collar work, the number of them that go to college is probably pretty low compared to the number of people like in their 20s or early 20s or late teens that like I'm sure the one-offs can happen. It just those always seem to be the exceptions, right? Rather than like this should be expected of every person. Like most people can accomplish this.
Those are the hardworking people. It's hard. I mean, extreme hardworking people are rare. There's plenty of people who will just give up after the first the first hurdle, and if the second one comes along, they're like, "Wow, these hurdles are never going to end. Oh, this is the second one," and they give up there. But I mean, what is the guy who jumped through a dozen hurdles?
The difference is if you're born into a really wealthy family, you might never have to jump like a really difficult hurdle. Like everything is kind of laid out in such an easier way in front of you that.
I mean, you keep saying these, and I'm gonna keep pointing at Woody's gamer tag over there. He was born into a wealthy family, and they were like, "Fuck you, earn it."
Yeah. Yeah, Woody's actually a great example of this.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm a great example. I can point to myself because I didn't have help and I did it, and I'm doing incredibly well now compared to where I came from, and I didn't have any help doing it. So, I mean, I could point to myself as an example, but like, it just feels like
the one thing that I feel like you said that's held true is expectations are high, and I think that helped drive me a lot. College was 13th grade. I was always expected to go to college from as long as I can remember anything about school,
Sure.
And I bet Taylor's in the same position where, from the time he was a kid, they expected him to go to 13th grade. And, there were times when I can remember I'd make like $100,000 a year, $120,000 a year. And my father just like, there's going to be a time, Woody, when you want actual good money. I know you're living the life with just working 40 or 50 hours.
Probably felt like shit.
Yeah.
After you said that, you're like, are you kidding me?
And, so expectations are high and they can kind of drive you. And that is a thing. But, I also feel like it sucks away a lot of the accomplishment that, if you say like, your parents, thought you could do it, so therefore it really wasn't you doing it. Like, I don't know if I buy that.
Sure.
Okay.
We can agree to disagree. I mean, we could hammer away at this for like hours, but yeah, no, I definitely understand where you're coming from.
I know Kyle's every time things get political, Kyle's usually looking like, what's the next topic? But thank you for indulging me. I thought we'd just do this for the last 9 minutes, and it turned out to be the last 59 minutes.
60 minutes. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, something like that.
Well,